I think Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Such an amazing weekend to look forward to in so many ways. I know Owen had flagged up before the Six Nations. I was making the case that England was the biggest game upcoming, and he was very much saying, obviously in the context of the World Cup, it's all about this one. And I'm on board now, Owen, by the way. I've come around to your way of thinking. The one thing I just wonder about is, and we've talked about it in a Liverpool context over the last few weeks, just about the impact of the little wobble that they've had, right? And it doesn't matter about how it came about, but it happened, and now suddenly there's a very different set of challenges ahead in a way that very much applies to Ireland now.
Yeah, for sure. They've got to dust themselves down, and in sport, when you lose matches or you're under pressure, and I think there was a lot of hysteria over the loss last week. Look, it was a disappointing loss, and we know that, and it's been covered so much. But for players, and if I was in the squad, or any of the players in the squad, I think they've just got to try and they've probably addressed the situation at the start of the week, and then your mind quickly has to go to what we got to do on Saturday. I think Joe Schmidt and his side have got to focus on trying to get a good start. 2 years ago, they were very slow out of the blocks, and Scotland kind of gained momentum. And to be fair, if you play in Murrayfield, it's not the most intimidating place to play if you start well and if you kind of settle into the game. I mean that respectfully. It's a brilliant place to play. Anytime I played there, I love singing the anthem, the Scottish anthem, when I was standing in the Irish line. So it's an enjoyable place if you start well. If you kind of lose a bit of flow and momentum, the crowd get crazy and they really sense an opportunity there, and that's what they did 2 years ago. So I think for Ireland this week, and Joe Schmidt made a very relevant point, that Ireland, they don't have to go chasing this and trying to score tries and taking risks and chances.
Trying to fix the England game almost.
Yeah, I think they just got to bend that, understand what happened, and be physical. That they can control that very much so in their application. There'll be no lack of motivation or desire from the Irish players. They need to bring a lot of energy, and they need to just kind of, for 50, 60 minutes until changes are made, just throw everything at it. And hopefully, unsettle Ireland, get a few penalties, settle themselves in the game. Yeah. The opposite can happen if Scotland get a bit of momentum, because they'll sense vulnerability, and they probably believe that Ireland are a bit vulnerable. So in some ways there's pressure on Ireland, but there's a little bit of pressure gone with that English game. They've got to start well. The changes don't help the situation, because you're going to readjust, and different guys have, they'll have a fair bit of push to come into the game and make an impact themselves.
Can we come back to the specifics of it in a minute? And I don't want to be, you've mentioned hysteria there, and I don't want to be hysterical about it, but in terms of the case for us being in a bit of a hole in terms of the World Cup, just a couple of points that I'm interested to get your response to them collectively. So Eddie O'Sullivan was on Wednesday Night Rugby during the week, and he was talking about the predictability of Ireland in a lot of ways. He didn't use that word, but a lot of the language that he was using was kind of suggesting that we had the Robbie Henshaw, loosely experiment, I suppose, at 15 that didn't work as we might have hoped. The wings that both finished the game last weekend, there's defensive question marks over them. We are hoping that Rob Kearney gets back into form. We're hoping that Conor Murray gets back into form. And we've a fifth choice lock starting this game tomorrow. Like, there's a collective of stuff there leading into the World Cup that's hugely concerning.
And if they kind of listen to people speaking on the outside about that, it may affect them. Like Quinn Roux coming into the game, he's a real opportunity now to make an impact. He wasn't picked in the original squad for the Six Nations. He's got to deliver. He's got to go out and be abrasive, be aggressive, and impose himself early on. Scotland have Johnny Gray back, which is a real added bonus, but I think Joe's going to put massive pressure on all these players to deliver. Now, they have a lot of resilience built up over the years, and with losses and disappointments, and they've clawed their way out of trouble on a number of occasions. So there's a huge amount of experience in the side, but Scotland will sense a little bit of opportunity with all that change and the psychological kind of scars of last week. But like I said, they've got to bend that. They can. The only way they can address that is on Saturday. So if Ireland get a good performance and a win, it'll build their confidence and belief again. But it's definitely added pressure for them. And there's enough of good players in the side. Chris Farrell, he's a really, really good player. He was superb against Wales last year. He can deliver. Quinn Roux, he has to bring his strengths to the side. Sean O'Brien coming back in, even though it's very unfair on Josh van der Fleer, I can see the reasoning to bring someone back who has a bit of an edge. He's aggressive. He'll be very vocal in the dressing room. He brings a lot of energy. Let's hope, he's had so many injuries that he can make an impact in this game. Jack Conan is someone as well who's probably looked at the CJ Standers situation for the last number of years and went, well, it's what do I have to do, because Standers' performances have been so consistent and such a high level. It's a real sense for him. If I was sitting down with Jack Conan, I'd be saying, well, here's your chance. Just go 120% for the whole game and just bring an energy and an aggression to say, well, you know, I can challenge for that spot. And I can make an impact. So we've a lot of hungry guys coming in. Chris Farrell will want to play well. What about Rob Kearney coming back? Like all the questions last week, he'll be mad for a massive performance. I know it doesn't guarantee a performance, but if the application and the attitude is right in these players, and you know, they have to motivate each other as well. You know, there's loads of experience. O'Mahony, O'Brien, Furlong, Healy, Best, you know, they know they were below par last week, so they have to start in an aggressive manner. And it's not necessarily on the scoreboard, because I really do agree with what Joe said. If they go forcing it and trying to force a performance early on, you can come unstuck, because it's a very good Scottish side. And if they kick Lucy to Hogg, Seymour, Maitland in the back three, they can really, really hurt you. So our kicking game was poor last week. And our ability to get over the gain line was poor. So those things, a lot of facets of Irish performance needs to be better.
What are Quinn Roux' strengths?
Well, he's not a footballer, so he's not someone who's going to be passing balls or kind of making wide passes. He's a big lump who's a good scrummager, good line-out operator, and he's physical and aggressive. So he has to, you want to see Quinn Roux putting in big impact tackles around the fringes tomorrow. Being physical in the maul and making carries, making hard yards off slow ball. And I think if he does that for 60 minutes, then you have an impact to Ultan Delan coming on, who'll bring a lot of energy. But I think he's been good this year, Quinn Roux. His game has improved, and you just think Henderson and Byrne missing is, you know, a few weeks ago we're talking about the depth in the second rows, and now we're kind of really, really stretched. So he's a physical brute, and he just has to bring physicality tomorrow, and that will hopefully enable James Ryan to put a bit of footwork on and make some carries, and the back row as well.
Yeah, we're going to get a look there in a second at the second row depth chart. This was Mike McCarthy's picks a few weeks ago, and Quinn Roux or Ultan Delan obviously not featuring. I mean, that maybe tweaks around. It will invariably sort of tweak around, and there's injuries and all that sort of stuff to deal with. But it seems like
he had John Klein as number 5, so that might become an option then for the World Cup, obviously. So.
I tell you, if John Klein was available at the moment, he'd be in the mix. But it's tough. It's tough because. But look,
he's a line out just on Quinn Roux. He's like he seems like he calls line outs at Connacht, and I mean maybe we just have underestimated this guy, and he's going to sort of.
Well, we'll see. It's a big opportunity for him. He hasn't played too many. People raised eyebrows when he started a couple of years ago in South Africa and on the tour there. There's still a few question marks there about the impact, the consistent high-level impact. I think he is fitter and he looks sharper, and he's very powerful.
What do you mean consistent high-level impact?
I just mean moments in the game for a second row. Like if you have Donncha O'Callaghan, for example, wasn't, and by his own admission, wouldn't be someone who'd be constantly on the ball and passing, and he was just, Dunners was so fit that he could run hard lines, hit rucks, be a nuisance, be a big physical presence, and that's
Is he not that?
Well, Quinn Roux needs, but Donncha had so many moments in the game, you know, impacts and breakdowns, pick and goes, carries, huge number of tackles. That's what you want from your second row, who's not your footballing second row. I think the ideal balance for any second row partnership is one brute and one really silky skills line-out operator. So Quinn Roux is to play to his strengths. He's
the donkey.
He's 19 stone, he's 6'6", he's really powerful. So if he is to make some carries tomorrow over the gain line, breaking up the Scottish maul, being powerful in the Irish maul, stuff like that. So there's a lot of pressure on him to do that, and an emphasis and an onus on him to do that. But it's not ideal. You go back to the World Cup in 15, those changes. I think the changes now, there's 5 changes. We're really stretched. If we get any more injuries, hopefully we don't, but there's a lot of top quality players missing, but they've got to cope now, and they've got to believe that they can go there and get a result against a very, very good Scottish side.
We'll get a look at the back row depth chart as well, and this is definitely one we want to get into. A couple of changes, we kind of touched on it there, but Van der Fleer and Stander out, and Sean O'Brien and Conan then come in. So initially, is it a weaker back row now?
I think when you had what happened in November with O'Mahony, Stander, Van der Fleer, they were so good against New Zealand that they were the ones in possession. I've said this all along, that you could change up the back row in any number of positions and still have a very good back row there. They're all good players. They're players who deliver consistently for the provinces. So it's not ideal, but having Sean O'Brien coming in, he will just be gunning to try and get a performance and get back on track. And like I said, Jack Conan as well, highly motivated to say, you know, I'm not sitting in the wings here. I don't want to wait behind CJ for the next couple of years and wait for my opportunity.
What's the difference between CJ Stander and Jack Conan?
Jack has a bit more kind of variety to his running game. He's more, I think he's probably someone who has an ability to be more evasive. CJ's big strength is just running out over people. And I think his game has developed over the years where he has a little bit more variety to his carries and stuff like that. But when you have someone who's making up on 20 carries, 20 tackles a game consistently, and a lot of them are big impacts, it's hard to shift that guy in front, you know. And Stander then has a real kind of energy about him all the time. So he's just a brilliant ball carrier. I think if anything, Jack Conan needs to be a bit more direct sometimes and run out over people. He's very, very quick in open spaces for a number 8. He's aggressive, he's very powerful and strong. But I think if I was to kind of, the strengths he has with the evasion and his footwork and stuff like that, if I was saying to him, you got to work on something, is actually running out over people, and sometimes in the hard yards, just being really aggressive. But he's very, very quick for number 8. And sometimes there's not a lot between all these back rowers. So there's very small margins. So, like I said, I picked Jack Conan at the start of the week, and I think he's a really good number 8, and it's another great opportunity for him.
Would it have been a close call about putting Sean O'Brien at 8 and just leaving the two flankers as they were?
Yeah, it would have been something that he probably thought about. But I think it'd be unfair in Jack Conan. He's very physical as well, and he's hard. He fronts up, and so again, it's only splitting hairs, you know. Sure. Getting Shawnee in is bringing in a world-class player who is a real presence in the dressing room, and a lot of the players talk about his ability to motivate people around him and just be hard. They need hard men here on Saturday, you know. They need to be really, it's a dogfight they're in, you know. They're in a bit of a hole, as you say, Adrian, so they have to fight their way out. So I think with the other changes, it probably lent itself to bringing O'Brien in because Van der Fleer has been so good, you know.
One of the previews that I read this week spoke about the clash of styles, off the cuff versus straight-laced. Is that where we're at? Yeah,
well, I think we're a very, very functional side in what we do, and we're a very patient side. And I don't think they should go and change everything and try and do what Scotland do. Scotland, I don't think they're a very well-balanced side, but you couldn't say that Scotland have a very dominant pack who'll overrun people. I think we probably kick a little bit more, we're very functional in what we do, and we put huge pressure on the opposition. And it's been, you know, it stood us very, very well over the last number of years.
Is the patience, it strikes me, could come back to bite us in the arse. There was one stat
where the problem is, Adrian, is when we go behind. If you're chasing a game and you're not used to throwing caution to the wind and firing the ball everywhere.
The stat was something about if we were more than a point behind at half time, we
last 20 games that we've lost.
That patience back a good work there.
Before Joe's time, it's back 20 games that we've lost. The last 20 that we've lost, we've been behind at half time. So that's the kind of a concern that, you know, are we good at chasing the games? And can teams contain us? Are we going to get an X-factor player? You know, is Earlsey going to run back and just sidestep 3 fellas and break through the line and we're going to score an incredible try? We don't seem to do that.
Stockdale maybe on occasion.
Yeah, on occasions. And I think we have that ability to do that. But I think we need to build up a bit of a repertoire of doing that, particularly if it happens again. like we scored the most tries in the Six Nations last year, so it's not as if we're this negative side. So I find that people who say that don't look at the stats and the numbers, but we are very functional, and we tend to build a lot to sense opportunity, rather some teams kind of throw caution to the wind and they try and score a first or second or third phase. But I think our provinces and the national team have been very effective at what they've done. So yeah, it is a concern if we go behind that we're chasing a game. We chased it 2 years ago and we got 17 unanswered points, but Scotland got a late try to kind of seal the victory. So it's, I think they just got to focus on this game, and hopefully that question about the depth will be answered.
I'm hearing you say, all I'm hearing is predictable, is what I'm hearing back. I mean, I know there's sort of, Schmidt has tackled it this week saying we've a varied game. He talked about set piece, talked about varied kicking, he said we're varied in attack, but...
I actually think we overplay sometimes in our own half. We did that last week. You can't accuse Ireland of not putting width in their game and just being negative and kind of keeping it tight all the time, because they do go over and back a lot. Sometimes we just need a bit more penetration, and maybe if someone makes a line break, just to off the cuff throw caution to the wind a little bit. But I just sense there'll be a different sort of energy this week. My worry is it's a good Scottish side who look very, very strong on paper. WP Nell is not playing. He's a little bit of a lost one, but they have Johnny Gray back, and it's certainly a good Scottish side. Yeah,
look exceptionally strong, and particularly across the back line. You mentioned Chris Farrell a bit earlier on, and talked to us a little bit more then about the midfield, and Aki has got some criticism obviously for his first receiver role, but that combination, obviously we're losing a leader in the team when Henshaw is not there, regardless of sort of what form he's in, but Aki and Farrell against that Jones and Johnson in midfield.
Yeah, it's well, I tell you, Hugh Jones, a very, very, very dangerous player. He's someone they've got to watch. He was really good from last year in the Six Nations. Made that brilliant line break and scored a try against England. Good in November as well. And I just think first and foremost we've got to be rock solid defensively, and that's probably the key for Aki and Farrell, that they work well together and they don't give up any opportunities in those kind of wider channels. And then in attack, I think, you know, Aki's got to step up and bring other people into the game, and sometimes just put the head down. I think a little bit last week he was trying to shovel on the ball a little bit. You'd just love to see him off the back of a line out, taking a hard line at Finn Russell a couple of times, and just giving a good target for the Irish pack to come around the corner and just be a bit direct. I think Farrell's hands are lovely, so it's a really good balance. I just hope it works. They haven't played together. Did they play together in that Welsh game last year? Was Aki 12? I can't remember. And well, I think he was, because he started his last 13 games. The last 13 games, I think, Aki. So I'm not concerned about it. I think they've just got to be very aware of the opposition. But also, if the two of them get running at Johnson and Hugh Jones, I think they can make inroads. Yeah.
I said a bullish Alan Quinlan is coming in after a few minutes, and you rolled your eyes up to heaven.
I'm up for myself. I'm going over there. Obviously, I'm doing the commentary, and it's not going to be easy. Well, look, I was nervous last week, particularly before the game. When it gets closer to the game, I get a sense of where I'm at myself. But I just think I think they will respond. I think there was a lot of hysteria last week, and some of it correct, some of it a little bit over the top. It was a setback.
You're talking about Owen specifically?
What was the sort of stuff that was over the top in your view?
I just think that, you know, I saw some pieces about how poor Ireland were and we've no plan B. And
we were poor.
We were poor, but it was the way it was being said. It was an incredibly good English side, and we just got caught cold out of the blocks, and it can happen. We haven't become a bad team. I'm surprised you're not suggesting we're a bad team now, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm suggesting actually the fact that we were poor last week is that I'm agreeing with you that this idea that there's a chasm suddenly between Ireland and England is just nonsense.
Yeah, and we mightn't win this week. We could have 0 from 2, which would be an
Ireland by
disaster.
is what you're saying. What? Last word.
Will there be Scottish people watching this? Will we get back to
well,
Greater Townsend?
You say there will be, yeah. What do you say?
I just fancy him to win by 5-7 points.
All right, good stuff. Talk to you Monday.
Hopefully I'm right, because I'm sick of talking about the negativity this week.
Thanks a million. Safe trip. Enjoy it. Alan Quinlan there is with us, as always, on a Friday.